Hi everyone. My name is Vishal and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are already into the Snowflake or if you are diving into the Snowflake, you must have heard one term which is tables. And not only just with the Snowflake, but you have actually known it from a long time when you started working with the database. How we are going to store the data, and that comes the tables. So, like in general, when this table is basically a combination of rows and column. But what something I'm going to teach you new in this video. You have already known this, know this term from past couple of years, right? So in Snowflake, basically offer different types of table for various use cases. Now, what exact tables and when exactly we needs to use you need to use, this is something which we are going to learn in this video. So understanding these can help you to choose the right one for your data pipeline and ultimately optimize your performance and cost. So this is not just because of okay, hey, for this particular use case, I may be going for XYZ table or YZ table. No, I will be having one thing in my mind that which should be optimize my performance and the cost. So today we are going to talk about four major types of table in Snowflake, which is permanent, transient, temporary, and external. But before that, let me just quickly show you what are the types of table we do have in Snowflake. So in Snowflake, in general, as you can see on my screen, we have 9 types of tables. Out of that, this dynamic tables, directory tables, event tables, and hybrid tables, and iceberg table. These we are going to discuss in the upcoming videos. This dynamic table, I will be creating a separate video for it so that you guys can understand better. But in this video, we are going to talk about the most commonly used tables in Snowflake. The first one is the permanent table, which is basically a default table into the Snowflake. Second, we have temporary table, and I'm sure you all would be aware of this term temporary table. Like it's going to be same as like your databases. But what something else we have over here in this temp table, we are going to explore in this video. Next, we have transient, and the last we have an external. So today we are going to talk about permanent, temporary, transient, and external. To understand when exactly we need to use and what would be the features and what would be the differences, how much the cost associated would be with this permanent table, a temporary table, and transient table, by end of this video you will be getting a good clarity on it. So as you can see this in this particular slide, we have 4 types of tables, and then I do have listed some of the properties here. So whenever I'm going to create any tables in my Snowflake, by default, it will be my permanent table. So in my last video, when I inserted the data into those tables, those were the permanent tables, and that is our default tables. These tables are generally designed to store data persistently, meaning if I wanted to keep this data until I decide to drop or modify, I will be going for the permanent tables. Now, before this, let me just show you how we can going to create it. So I came onto my Snowflake worksheet. I'm going to click on new SQL worksheet, and here I'm going to rename it tables. Okay, now I'm going to select my YouTube learning database, and there I'll come into the raw data. So if I show you right now, show tables, and when you see it here, I can see there are almost 10 tables. Okay, let me just do one thing. I'm going to create a new schema, create schema, and that is going to be the raw layer. Now, if I write show tables, there will not be any tables right now because I just created this. And you might have seeing that, okay, I just created a raw layer, then white automatically gets selected because it's a default Snowflake properties. Now, let me just create one table, create tables, and this is, let's say, customer ID, int, and customer name. This is varchar. Now, if I'm going to run this show table command, you can see that when it got created, what was the name, the database, the schema, and this is the kind. Now look at this property which is kind is showing me that this is a table. It's nowhere mentioned, it's a permanent table, and I did not even use any keyword like a permanent here. So by default, if I'm going to create any table, that will be the permanent tables. Now you look at one more thing, this is a retention time. Okay, now I'm going to create one more table which is a transient table. So if I wanted to create transient, temporary, or external, or anything like a hybrid table, dynamic table, whatever you see in this my previous slide, I just have to use that keyword. Create event, create external, create hybrid, that all keywords I'm going to use here. So let's look at it. So I'm going to create transient tables, and this is going to be my employee. And here I'm going to write eid int and ename as a varchar. Now I created it. Now I'm going to rerun the show tables command and look at the kind here. So this one is table, means it's a permanent table, it's a transient table. Okay, now similarly I'm going to create a temporary table. Either you write a temporary or you write a temp. That is going to create a temporary table. Let me just, this is going to be my orders, and here OID let's look at it. Now again I'm going to run this same command show tables and look at this thing. I do have table, transient and temporary. So by this way, I can see that this is my permanent table, this is my transient table, and this is my temporary table. And you know it already that temporary table are just the session specific. So if I'm going to close the session or if I'm going to outside of the session, I will not be able to see this temporary table, and we can even verify with this way. I am going into my this show tables, and here I will be only and only will be seeing two tables, which is table and transient. Now, what if, can I create a temporary global or local temporary table? Let's just try that. I'm going to use the same line, and here I'm going to write create global, and this time I'm trying to use this temp keyword, temp tables, and this is going to be products. And here it would be just pname, PID, pname. I can see this is a temporary tables we do have over here. Okay, so we can even use this local. Okay, I can even run this create or replace local, create or replace local temporary table, and here I can see this show tables. There I would be seeing this keyword like this product also. This is a temporary tables I can see over here. Okay, sounds good so far. Now moving ahead, this one I can see this, I can create these three tables. Now I am just going to create one table, create hybrid table, and that is edge customer, and I am just writing cust id int, and for the hybrid table we have to declare a primary key which is mandatory here. So I created a, and now if I create show tables which is edge customer, and you will be surprised to see even the edge customer kind is showing tables. Now the question comes that how would I check, how would I be sure whether it's a permanent table or a hybrid table? So that is a question, whether this edge customer is my hybrid table or my permanent table, because here I created this hybrid customer. So to identify this, now first thing in this kind you will be only and only seeing these two values, which is table, transient and temporary. But if I am going to create any of this table, dynamic, directory, iceberg, hybrid, external, I will be showing here. You just need to scroll to the right, and once you come here, there you will be seeing these flags, is external, is event, is hybrid. Look at this. This is why that means H customer is my hybrid table. Rest everything is n, is external is n, is event is iceberg dynamic. So these all tables is basically nothing but just a permanent table. So if my flag is yes, that means whether this is an hybrid table, and if it would be yes over here, that it means external table. But in that kind, you will be only seeing these three values. Okay, so syntax is clear. Now I know it. How can I create this permanent table, transient table, temporary table, and external table also? But for external table, you need to have your external stays ready. That means I should have a account which I should have created one data lake account like S3, GC or ADLS, and there I kept some file and I wanted to utilize those files into my Snowflake. Okay, understand, if I have one file which is of 100 GB into my ADLS or my S3, and I do not want to store the data into my Snowflake because there is no point of paying at paying storage cost as two places. So my manager say that, hey, why don't you just analyze the data from that particular file and then give me some insights. So I will be creating an external table in this case, because in external table I do not have to pay any storage cost to the Snowflake. I will be only and only paying the compute cost which is required for that particular analysis. Okay, sounds good. So this I will be creating when I will be teaching you how to create an external stage. Okay, now the persistence of the permanent table is going to be until and unless I'm going to drop it. And so the transient table. So transient table, permanent table and the external table will be there until unless I'm going to drop it. But this temporary table, you all know it, that this is going to be there for until this session gets over, or you are going to log off. So let's see that. I'm just going to cancel this. I just cancel this. Now I'm going to open it, this worksheet, and then, or okay, basically it's too much over here. So I'm going in this tables type here, and now I'm going to run a show tables. This temporary is coming because I just removed this. Session is not over. Okay, so session means that, okay, once you log off from your Snowflake, or you basically open a new worksheet here. So if I'm going to open a new worksheet here and I'm going in the same database, YouTube training and this raw layer, and now if I write show tables, okay, then we can see it, there is no temporary table here. Okay, and in fact, if I just close my Snowflake, let's suppose, then that will be lost from here also. Okay, then that will be lost from here also. So what I'm gonna do is I'm coming to here, but in this meantime, if I can basically show you that, okay, just imagine if I'm just basically closing it, then this will also lost. So if you're gonna check it tomorrow, or once you log off, or once you basically disconnect from the Snowflake, these temporary tables will go away. Okay, so it's particularly to that it's just basically that session specific remainder of the sessions. Now the next property we can see in the right hand side is the retention time. So by default right now, its a retention time is 1 day because it follows off this database, okay, and the database and schema. So raw layer schema is having a 1 retention time. So this, because of this YouTube learning, also database having a 1 retention time. But in this temporary table and transient table, the maximum we can set a retention time of 1 day. Let me just show you here. So if I'm going to run this alter table, and here I'm going to write products, and there I'm writing set data retention time in days equal to 10. Let's suppose if I'm going to try to set this 10, then I'll get this invalid value 10 for parameter data retention time in days. That means for the temporary and transient, I definitely cannot set more than one value. Even if I'm going to try it for employee, it will throw an error. But I have one customer table which is my permanent object, and if I try to set this query for this customer table, then its statement executed successfully. And when you run the show tables one more time, and you will be seeing for this edge customer my retention time is 10 days, and for rest it is going to be 1 day. Now one more thing in this is time travel retention time for permanent. The maximum it can go up to 90 days. Okay, by default it will be 1 days for all this permanent, transient and temporary. For external we don't have any data. Why? Because storage is outside of the Snowflake. It only keeps the metadata, and we cannot make any changes on this external table. So it does not support any time travel. Now, apart from this time travel, we have a 7 days of additional fail-safe period, which is only and only for the permanent tables, and for transient and temporary it is 0. Okay, so that means if my data is lost, I have only 24 hours for the transient to recover that data. If I lost that time travel period, or if the time travel period is over for transient object, then I will not be able to recover that data. But for permanent, I can set any value between 0 to 90 days, even 5 days or 20 days or 25 days, depending on my use case, depending on the type of table I have, depending on what kind of a data I'm putting into it. And it provides 7 days of additional failsafe, which is non-configurable, and there is no no control of user in this. Okay, now let's understand the purpose of the permanent tables. I do understand, okay, you probably got some idea that yes, Vishal, I got a very good idea that okay, how we need to create a permanent table, transient table, temporary table and external table. I can even see that if I'm going to run the show tables, I can see that which is my permanent table, transient table and temporary table or external table. I can even update the retention time. But now, one question which is coming in my mind, there is a one customer table. What if I try to create the same customer table, but let's say I'm going to write a temporary table now. So I'm going to write create temporary table, and that is a customer. And here I'm writing cust id int address varchar is int name varchar. This time I'm even changing the schema of this temporary table, and you see I did not get the error. So Snowflake will allow you to create the same table name, will allow you to create same temporary table with the same name of either a permanent or a transient. Even if I'm going to create another temporary table with this, I do have one employee. This is my transient table. So if I try to create this one also, that will also give me the option. But now if I am going to run this command show tables, then it will show me only and only the temporary tables. These are my temporary tables. However, one interesting thing, if I am going to check into my different session, or let's suppose this user 1 is actually working on it and he created this temporary table at his worksheet, but there is a second user, let's say Megan Fox or Katrina Kaif, they both are trying in their laptop, then they will be only and only seeing the permanent objects, won't be seeing those temporary objects. Here I can see this customer is stable and employee is the transient. Also, in the same window, in the same session, if I'm going to write drop table customer, then Snowflake will give the preference to the temporary tables. So now I drop this customer table, and in fact I'm going to run the show table, still the customer table is there. So if this is very interesting interview question. If anyone is asking that I executed a drop table customer and then immediately I'm running select star from customer, then too I'm seeing some data. Why it is also? Because the customer which table got deleted, that was a temporary table, which is basically hided the permanent object or permanent table. But when you try select start from customer table again, then it read from the permanent object. Now if you will run it select start from customer, you will not be getting an error that the object does not found. It will give you, but it's just going to give you from the previous, with the previous schema we have over here. Okay, so understand one thing, that if I'm going to create a temporary table with the same name of the transient and the permanent, it will allow me to create it, but it is and any operation which I'm going to make it, that will happen on the temporary. So temporary table will take a precedence or will take a preference over these two objects. However, if I'm going to open into a new session and will try to check it, then I will be seeing only and only the permanent object, as the temporary table will not be visible to the outside of the session. Okay, now next difference is, if you try to clone a permanent table into a transient and temporary, then it can be cloned. However, the transient you wanted to clone into a permanent table, then it cannot be cloned. Similarly, temporary also cannot be cloned into the permanent. Let's just try to do that. So right now I am going to create one table, create or replace table. This is basically a EMP clone as, and here I'm going to write clone employee. Let's see that. So temp table cannot be cloned to a permanent table. Clone to a transient table instead. Okay, so whatever I mentioned over here, that it cannot be cloned, temporary table or transient table cannot be cloned into a permanent table. In fact, I can try with this one, because right now I'm cloning this employee, and employee is existing a temporary table. So let me just drop this one, and then I'm going to execute this one. This transient object cannot be cloned to a permanent object. But you can clone a permanent object either into a permanent tables or into a transient or into a temporary. Sounds good? And then these all tables supports like temporary, transient, external, permanent. They supports to create the view on top of it, so that you can share with your reporting team, or you can apply some kind of let's say row level or column level security. So for that you can create a view on top of these tables. So we have understood how we are going to clone, how we are going to create these tables, how we can update the data retention time in it, okay, how we can check it whether this is a tables but it's just a hybrid table, a permanent table, or an event table or iceberg table. That also we can see, because there is a flag into it. Okay, but one thing which is very very important, where exactly I will be using the transient table, where you think the temporary table will be used, and where permanent table or external table will be preferred. This is a very very important thing to understand the use case of these four tables. Now, first let's talk about the transient table. The temporary table, because this is very much familiar. You guys are familiar with the temporary table from your previous databases. You have been working with SQL Server, Oracles, and the other databases. So temporary tables is basically a session specific. So can I simply say, if I wanted to store some session specific intermediate data, then temporary table will be best. In simple word, if I wanted to analyze the result, or if I wanted to basically perform some complex calculation, and whatever the result I'm getting later, I wanted to use this result for my further calculation or further analysis, then there I will be preferring a temporary table. Okay, in simple word, when you need to perform some intermediate operation within a session, such as running basically running queries, then you will be going for a temporary table. Or you can simply say, when working with a series of transformation or aggregations across the table, which can help you to reduce the redundant computation and simplify the process, there I will be going for temporary table. Okay, next we have transient table. Now, the difference between the temporary and transient, because temporary also you might be going for intermediate data processing, but it is best suitable when we wanted to process, when we wanted to when we are going for a ETL data processing, but I wanted to store that result for my staging purpose. Why? Let's suppose if I am loading the data from S3 and first I'm maintaining this data into my staging table, and then from staging to I'm loading into the dimension table. Now I know that this staging every day I will be loading, and if I'm going to make it as a permanent, then do you remember I told you that this is going to be a failsafe of 7 days? And this 7 days is not free. So let's suppose there is a 1 GB of file I'm getting every day and I'm making the changes, then this 1 GB becomes seven times of it, and you need to pay 7 times of this 1 GB for that particular file. So there is no point, like, because I know that every day I'm loading this new file, so why should I go for a permanent table? I can simply go for a transient table. Okay, so this transient table, I know that first thing it is going to use intermediate data processing. When I know that, okay, I cannot go for temporary table. Why? Because it should be available across all the session and for all the users. Second, some scenario where the data is used within the same session or in a very short period, but I also know this one thing in my mind: even if I lost this data, I can recover from the source. So there I'm not much concerned about the data storage. I'm not concerned about the data storage, or basically even what should I say? The data recovery. I'm not much concerned about the data recovery, then transient table will be the best. But if I want my data to be retained for indefinite time, and also I know that this data is very critical. If someone is going to play with this data, if someone misbehave this data, I need to recover it, and for that I will be using a permanent table, which gives me an option to go up to 90 days plus 7 days of failsafe period. Okay, so if I want my data for a long-term data storage, then the permanent table is the best, such as dimension or fact I wanted to keep it, or I wanted a historical records, then permanent table will be best. Okay, so I hope you get it. This permanent table, transient table, and temporary table. Now coming to the final one, which is external table. So suppose my data is stored outside of the Snowflake, typically like data lakes, S3, Azure Blob, or Google Storage, and I do not want to store into the Snowflake. I just wanted to perform some analytics without copying the data into the Snowflake, then external table is the best, where I will be referring to that particular data lake, and there I will be creating one stage, and then I can do all the process like all the aggregations and select star and everything, but it is not going to allow me to perform some DML changes on it. Okay, so in simple word, permanent table is for long-term and persistent data, where I wanted to the security of my data, where I can basically recover this data easily. Transient table is for short-term data that does not need the backup, but it should be available for all the user and all the session. Temporary table, it's only for the intermediate session, which is basically that it automatically get dropped one session in. An external table when we wanted to store data externally but wanted to query into the Snowflake. Okay, I hope that's clear. If you still have any confusion or any question, please drop into the comment box. Thank you for watching, and I hope you find this video useful. So please like it and subscribe my channel. Thank you.